So my name is Jackson Long, and I'm in long-term recovery. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. All right, now we're going to have fun in here.
Yes.
This panel is a little bit different. We don't have a moderator and a bunch of speakers. We don't have any professionals, a bunch of acronyms after their name. It's just me and Jason. What we're going to do is we're going to get real in here. Can we do that?
Yes.
We're not going to talk around anything. We're going to talk directly at it.
Yes.
We're going to cover stuff that is real, happening in your houses. We're not going to sugarcoat anything. We're going to be honest, but we're going to be objective. So it's very important that we take an honest look at who we are as houses and how we can improve to give people a better chance at solid, stable, supportive recovery that Oxford House, when you go out and do those presentations, that we promote. Okay? So we're going to go through some slides, and you're going to have probably a lot of things coming through your head that you may not agree with 100% of it. That's okay. We don't always have to agree on everything, and some of it you may want to ask some questions. We're going to ask you to please hold any questions or comments until the end. Let us get through the slides. Some of the questions you may have, we may answer by the time we get to the end of the slides. So I'm going to start it off to kind of set the tone. Then Jason's going to come in and cover a portion, and then I'll come in and cover a portion, and then we will take questions at the end, okay? So for those of you just coming in, y'all are in the right spot. How many of you want to live in the best Oxford house you possibly can? And you're in the right spot. So take a look at yourself internally. Just take a moment to think about who you are as an individual. What is your belief system? What are your values? What kind of attitude do you have towards yourself and the world around you? Everybody's different. I bet that you, when you do an internal look, that you are different today than you were when you were in active addiction. Is that a true statement? Yes. You have different beliefs, your values are different, you hold things more of higher value, and you have a different attitude about the world around you, correct? Yes. So we have to remember that where you're at today, you're not going to be at next year. 5 years from now, 10 years from now, we're continuing to evolve as human beings. And hopefully as you maintain your recovery, you will continue to grow and improve in the areas that you want to change in your life, your attitudes, your beliefs, your values. So remember that when the new people are coming in, that just because you have a little bit of time and you have grown in your beliefs and values, they're just getting started. So we're on the same path, but we may be at different points along the path. So I'm going to ask you to remain open-minded. That's the only thing I'm going to ask from you in this panel. Can everybody agree, let's be open-minded during the next 1 hour and 15 minutes? Yeah. Some of you come from an area where I hear it all the time. Well, that's not how we do it in my house. How many of you have heard that? Just because you were taught something a certain way does not mean it's the right way or the best way to do it. Many times there are multiple right ways to do it. And a lot of people have figured out the best way to do it, and you haven't even been exposed to it. So what you think you're doing as the best way isn't even really the best way to do it. So be open-minded. I'm not saying everything I have on here is the best way to do it, because I'm open-minded enough to continue to grow and learn. But this is going to be our experience of what we've seen as best practices to improve the quality of houses. So in order to kind of bring it to proper perspective, what do you see when I hold this up? Money. Okay, I agree. I will agree with that. I see money. What else do you see? A president? I disagree. Whoever said a president, you're wrong. You're wrong. That's not what I see. I see a pyramid. Now, the fact that you see a president and I see a pyramid, does that mean you're right and I'm wrong? No. What does that mean? I'm looking at it from a different angle. We're looking at the same thing. The same thing, we're just looking at it from a different angle. And I think that's what makes Oxford House so successful, is that we bring in people from different backgrounds, ages, race, identity, whatever it is, they come from different life experiences, and we need that. I need to have the perspective of Jason. When we're working together for this convention planning, I need his perspective because he sees things in a different way than I do. And I need that. And in turn, he needs what I see. And we work together and it becomes improved because we can bring it home together. In a house, you have that same opportunity. So you got to be careful that you do not deny somebody else where they're at with their vision, their perception, their values and beliefs. What is truth? Truth is subjective. Your truth may not be somebody else's truth, and your truth may change over time. What is reality? You have to look at these things, and you have to be open-minded to understand that reality and truth can sometimes interchange and sometimes can contradict each other. You have to remain open-minded and know that even the newest person in Oxford House of Recovery can teach you a lot of things, even if you have multiple years of recovery. So, how many of you came into Oxford House because you wanted a safe place to live? How many of you have been in Oxford House longer than 6 months? I would imagine that a lot of those hands that are up, you probably have an opportunity either now or in the very near future to get into your own place, to move into independent living. A lot of you that are here, and I know I'm preaching to the choir, there's a lot of people back home that probably need to be in this chair. You all are the champions for your area. Your chapters, your houses, your states have trusted you to come and get this information, most likely because you're stepping up and being of service in your area. You're leaders of your area. So you come into Oxford House for yourself. Want some stability. I just wanted a safe place to live. I got a lot more out of it, but initially I just wanted a safe place to live. I didn't trust living by myself. Family was not a good idea. That was toxic. You know, and everybody has a different reason. Some get a nudge from courts or counselors or whatever, but you come in and it's a very selfish motivation on the front end. But after you live in Oxford House a little bit and you gain some sobriety, it becomes less about you and more about trying to help the next person coming up. You end up training somebody to take over your secretary position. You show them how to do the chores. You help them figure out how to do laundry. Or am I doing cold water with colors or cold water with what? Like you start to help people with these things. So you enter for yourself, but you stay for others. Here's how Oxford House is organized on a very basic local level. You have your houses at the top that have full autonomy. The chapters are there to support the houses. Where would we be if we did not have chapters? How many houses do you think we'd have in the country? We'd probably still be just in the Northeast. We would not have expanded like we did. We need the safety nets of chapters so that houses can rely on those chapter principles. You know, those 3 chapter principles. Making sure houses are following the conditions of their charter, sharing experience, strength, and hope, fostering expansion as we continue to fill up. But chapters alone sometimes cannot even be enough of a safety net. You have to have that subcommittee of the housing services that are going into the community to educate about Oxford House and that are going into other houses to train the new members and help. Because sometimes people come into houses and they're not being trained, they're being ignored, and we need the strong houses to come and help educate some of the houses that are struggling. And then you have the support of OHI. And OHI provides the website, the legal support, and sometimes outreach in a local area. So all together, that makes a very strong structure. Very supportive, strong structure, as long as everybody understands the role and how they all work together. So in order for a house to get strong, you have to first know where you're at. So I'm going to hand it over to Mr. Jason Giroux, and he's going to explain to you about the 4 stages of houses.
Thank you, Jackson. Good morning, everyone. My name is Jason. I'm a person in long-term recovery. What that means for me is that I haven't found it necessary to use a mind and mood-altering chemical since November 29th of 2011. For that, with the program of recovery in Oxford House, I'm truly grateful. So I'm going to go through the 4 stages of an Oxford House, 4 stages of Oxford houses. What I want you to do is just what Jackson mentioned earlier. Keep an open mind. I want you to take a self-evaluation of your house, where you're at currently as I go through them. And then when we go and break down each particular stage, at the end, we're going to look back and see where you truly are and where you want to be. So the first stage is survival, right? Second is stable. Third is successful. The fourth is significant. So just to also let you know, at the end, we're going to post all of the presentations throughout the whole conference on a particular Google Drive. So if you're taking pictures now, that's great. But if you really want the presentation afterwards, you'll have access to that, just to let you know. So at this particular point, where do you think you fall on the spectrum, knowing the information you know from the screen? How many of you are in a survival stage? All right. How many in a stable? Okay. What about successful? All right. And what about a significant? Okay. Good. Huh? You're not sure what that is? All right. Well, I'm going to break it down for you. So stage one, survival house. It's generally your new houses, those with nearly vacant beds, where you have a revolving door of residents, people coming and going, either relapsing, moving out quickly, whatever that may be. Your bills are generally all behind, okay? Or you're paying half and not paying all, which is still behind. There's no recovery. You're not talking about anything but just turning the key and going to your room. There's no structure, probably no house meetings going on, no books. There's no accountability. You really, really could use a core member. And it needs financial support. And last, you obviously need some training. So that's stage one. Stage two, there's very little money after bills are paid. Like you wrote that check and there's maybe $10. You're like, oh, good, we're doing good. No. If someone leaves that week, or you're not going to make it next month. Money is owed to the house. If somebody's walking around in your house with a brand new pair of Jordans or Nikes and they got money on the books, that's a problem. Huh? What is it? Nails done, yeah. There's sporadic participation. Sometimes people are doing their chores, sometimes they're not. Sometimes they're getting involved in the house meeting, sharing their information. Sometimes they're even making the house meetings. Your house has bosses and not leaders. Who knows the difference between a boss and a leader? What's the difference between a boss and a leader?
A leader sets an example and a boss tries to tell people what to do.
Exactly. A leader sets the example and a boss tries to tell people what to do. Chores are skimped. I think it's funny when you go into a house that's really, really on the higher ends of the spectrum, and like it's just so immaculately clean. And then you look in the books and they're like to the penny. They're good. Notes are taken. Chores are your first. How many people watch the 60-minute video? Chores are the first sign for individuals that something's going wrong, right? That's that behavior. Recovery is rarely discussed. Now, we talk about houses being autonomous in that fact, and we talk about in our traditions that active participation in a program of recovery leads to long-term success, right? There's inconsistent rule enforcement. Sometimes they'll find somebody for leaving stuff in the sink. Sometimes they won't. Or maybe they'll find one person. Maybe they won't find the other person. It's across the board. We're all there for the same reason, to be held accountable. We're not doing justice or an in-service to someone else if we're not holding them accountable just as much as the next person. Most times are spent in the bedroom. Isolation. What was one of the main causes of us relapsing over and over and over again when we started doing things? Isolation. So why would we let someone else in the house isolate? Unorganized or incomplete paperwork. The first time when we go into houses is outreach. When there's a problem, what's the first thing you see most of us do? We go straight to the books. I want to see the secretary's notes of what's going on, and I also want to see the comptroller's report. Then I'm going to look at the checkbook, right? There's general apathy within the house. So, stage 3, successful house. It's the cornerstone of recovery. There's successful people, got some time, probably 6 months or more. Depends on what area you're in that's been there longer. They may have people with a couple of years in sobriety. They have a savings account, got some money in it, bills are paid. Each month, or sometimes each week, money is transferred from their checking over into their savings automatically. There's I cannot speak today. Cooperation and communication. Communication is key within a house meeting, right? Everyone should have the ability and the right to speak up and share how they're feeling in their house without the fear of repercussions or without the fear of someone seeing a cup that they put down and bam, flap them with a fine for $5, $10, $50, right? Smooth meetings. Your meetings really, if you're doing what you're supposed to do and your reports are on time, even if you're talking about just some housekeeping issues, could run right at 45 minutes. They don't have to be an hour and a half, 2 hours. 4 hours? I've never been in a house meeting 4 hours. Jeez. Yeah, welcome to stage 1. You're getting there. Keep up the good work. There's organized binders and complete reports, right? If someone misses a house meeting, and I stress this to houses when I'm training them, if someone in your house misses a house meeting for whatever particular reason, hopefully it's an excused absence, they can go into the books and know exactly everything that took place in their house, right? From the meeting minutes to who paid, who didn't pay, who did their chore, all of that information. Your books and binders are your legal binding documents of your house, right? House unity. Protected finances with 2 signers. How many, and I know this answer because we just process lots of checks for registration. So I know there's several houses out there that send in checks with just 1 signer and there's 2 lines on the check. So you're supposed to have protected finances with 2 signers, right? Who are those signers supposed to be? Not the treasurer. But who are those signers supposed to be? Well, the president and the comptroller. Who would be an alternate? Okay. But first and foremost, it's not who? All right. There's house unity. That's whether they're going to meetings, they're going to movies, they're doing cookouts, you're inviting other houses over to hang out, do things together as a house. When I first moved into my first house, we had a weekly dinner that we had. We had a Prudent Reserve. We would buy milk, bread, eggs, and then we'd also buy steaks, hamburger meat, and hot dogs. And once a week, we always had a unity cookout. It was just a way for us to get together, hang out, keep that open door of communication going, not just in a formal setting of a house meeting, but also, check on each other, where we're at. In Louisiana, we called it where you at, right? Where you at? So leaders are teaching the newbies, right? If you're in a house for longer than 30 days, and you have people moving in, you really should be stepping up and showing them how things are done in the house. Share with them your experience, strength, and hope, because in my case, as far as I'm concerned, after 2 weeks, you know what's going on. Like, it's not hard. It's not rocket science. Even though some of us were scientists. Like, it's not. Yeah. She got it. Chemist. So the house is also involved with the chapter in housing services. So I was less than 30 days within my house going to the chapter meeting, and I got elected chapter chair. That's exactly what I said. What? Get involved. there was like the third week I was there. Some people came over from the chapter and like, yeah, we just heard somebody at a meeting say somebody was using at a house, and like, we're going to go over and test the house. I said, I'm in. I jumped in the back seat. Let's go. So the clean house, upgraded beds and furniture. You know, in some areas, we've been there quite a while. Should probably not have the same bed that's been there for 15 years or the same couch. Like, let's upgrade that stuff. There's lots of connections and community organizations out there that you can get stuff donated. Houses that have savings accounts, which is bullet number 2, can utilize those funds to upgrade your house. Stage 4, which is the significant phase, rarely has vacancies. Probably have a waiting list, right? But if you have a waiting list, you should really be referring them to other vacancies within your area. Members are stepping up to serve. This, you know, if you have outreach in your area, what a blessing. But that doesn't mean that you should just be letting other people or the outreach do every particular thing. Step up and serve. That's how we actually got hired as outreach. You know, we got into the middle of the boat and started paddling. You know, that's what happened to the people before you. That's why your houses and chapters are still there, because those people stepped up to serve when they were needed. As I said earlier, unity dinners, 12-step meetings, you know, we talk about in the book before and after the meetings or take place at Oxford houses. Lots of new meetings are started within the areas of Oxford houses and where they are. Savings account with over $2,000. Now, this is just a number. Doesn't have to necessarily be $2,000. It can be, you know, 4, 6. I've seen a couple houses with $8,000 in their savings account. It happens, right? All members are trained to be leaders. That starts really from day one. Everyone in your house should be cross-trained on your positions. They should be able to serve in any position with that excused absence. Give you an example. I'm staying in a house now. I was gone for a couple of weeks. Someone stepped in to do the treasurer position for my house. We were all cross-trained. Everyone knows how to do every position. Just because you're not in the rotation at that point doesn't mean you shouldn't know what's going on. Open communication. I mentioned this earlier. This is key. Open communication is being able to speak in a loving and caring way what's going on in your house without the fear of repercussions. The rules, she said, if that, there's certain people, but let's talk about it. And, you know, there's a sponsor that they should call. Talk about it within your house. I'll just share with you talking about sponsor. And we had an issue in my house when I first moved into Oxford House. Within my first week, I got $50 in fines. Our fines were $5 a piece, so you do the math. Yeah, I wouldn't want to do shit. So I got mad, right? But guess what? When I got mad and started busting, firing back and giving lip, and my particular house, you had to list your sponsor's name on the board and a number. My house called my sponsor, right? Open communication. If I wasn't going to hear it, they were going to make sure that someone else heard it, and we all worked together. So they called me out on it. Giving back to the community, right? Getting involved. I know there's some areas out there that we actually have. Where was it? Is it Indiana, I believe? There's a neighbor that comes over and drinks coffee and smokes cigarettes with the guys. Like, they cut her grass once a week. Getting involved and giving back to the community in the small, simple ways. A significant house is really a breeding ground for core members, right? So when we open a house, we try to get some core members from the particular area to move in so that they can train the newer residents that are moving into that house. That's generally how outreach have gotten involved. They've moved as a resident into a house, open another house, and then when contracts expand or we get new contracts, they generally apply and are hired on as outreach. So core members should be a greeting ground in a significant house. They're happy to volunteer when asked, right? When we ask somebody to come help move furniture, it should be hands up like it was a while ago. So, with all of that being said, those that were in a significant house earlier, do you still feel you live in a significant house? There's 4 of the 12 hands that were up. That's good. So, this is a touchy subject. A seasoned member versus a senior member. When I first came in, we were called senior members, but then as I grew in recovery and I grew in Oxford House, I realized that particular word senior member gives us some right, or gives us the thought that we have the right to do things, right? So use the term seasoned member in your house, because we are a more seasoned person. We're not a senior person just because we have some time, right? So a seasoned member welcomes the new members. A senior member doesn't even know their name. A seasoned member trains new officers. A senior member refuses to be an officer. I've done my time. A seasoned member volunteers to serve. A senior member avoids chapter and housing services. I got to work. There's always that I got to work. Guess what happens in the house meet when I hear I got to work too much? Can I see your schedule? Then it's generally, oh, I'm off. A seasoned member goes to lots of meetings. A senior member meets with their significant other. They're meeting, but it ain't at a meeting. A seasoned member continues to grow. A senior member continues to plateau. A seasoned member checks in with members. How you doing? What's going on? How you been? Where you at? A senior member checks their bedroom DVR. The last house that I opened in DC, we didn't even have cable in the bedrooms. We only got it in the living room. I mean, that's just what the house paid for. And if you wanted it, you streamed it and you hooked it up yourself, but it cut out a lot of the isolation in bedrooms. A senior member shares their experience, strength, and hope, right? A senior member shares negativity. A seasoned member stays to give back, and a senior member stays for cheap rent. A seasoned member works a recovery program, whatever that recovery program looks like to them. And a senior member, when they're off work, is straight to their bedroom. Is that isolation again? So with that being said, I'm going to turn it back over to Jackson to talk about the 5 principles and significance.
I got a pretty cool perspective up here. All you beautiful people.
Yeah.
How many of you are seasoned members? It's a lot. How many of you are senior members? Now, wait a second. I thought we agreed to be real in here. I know we got a couple of senior members in here. You could identify with a couple of those things. Just room to grow. Nobody's perfect. We all got room to grow. So Jason broke down the 4 stages of houses. How many of you were not in a stage 4 significant house? Not in a stage 4 house. 1, 2, or 3. All right, I'm going to tell you how to get to stage 4. How about that? You want to go to the promised land, the winner's circle? The 5 core principles: recovery, responsibility, accountability, communication, and then unity and fun. That's how you do it. Now we're going to break down each one of those. But if you want to have a stage 4 house, you focus on that. Do you notice what's not on there? Money. Your bank account does not denote how successful your house is. And the problems around money, not being able to pay your rent, pay your chapter dues, or ask for a loan, those sort of things, is not the problem. If I'm a chapter officer and I hear a house can't pay its rent, their lack of money is not the problem. It's one of these things that has led to a depletion of their funds. So you got to find what the core issue is. Cutting them a check is not going to solve their problems. It's just putting a Band-Aid on it till next month if you don't go in and you address one of these core principles. So recovery, this is it. I mean, this is why Oxford House started. It is for people in recovery. And I'm going to say this very slowly and very clearly so it sinks in with you. Oxford House is not a shelter for abstinence. It is a home for recovery. Okay? It's not just a roof over your head. And it is not for everybody. We're a big net. We cast a big, wide net, but it's not for everybody. There are people that want to just stay in Oxford House and not do anything. They can go to another type of sober living where they have somebody that tells them what to do, has a house manager, a house mother. There's other types for people like that. When you come into Oxford House, you're going to do some things. Number one, you're going to stay in recovery. You're going to have to go to some meetings. Now, I know there's been an expansion of the recovery process and the pathways of recovery. I think all houses need to be mindful of that and respectful of that. We want to see growth. We don't want you just to do nothing, come into a house. Just because you haven't put a drink or a drug in your system doesn't mean you're working a program of recovery. I've been into Oxford houses where somebody's been living in the 7 months, and during the reading of the minutes when they're doing the roll call, they'll ask how many meetings you've been to, when's the last time you talked to your sponsor, and what step you on, and they're still on step 2. And it's like, you've been here 7 months. What are you doing? Like, you're using Oxford House as your recovery program, and that's not going to work long term. Home group. I can't stress this enough. And here's my suggestion from my experience. And I am not an old timer. I've 13 years of recovery. I've seen a lot of different meetings around the country. That the best home group that I ever had was a men's meeting once a week. I would suggest finding a gender-specific meeting that you can call your home group and be there every day like clockwork, or week, or whenever it shows up. Step work. Going to meetings, sitting in a room, and sharing some experience, strength, and hope, or reading a paragraph from a book. That's great. That's a good part of the recovery process, but that's a small part of it. You need to do the internal work, and that requires you working one-on-one with a sponsor, a mentor, somebody that can guide you, that's been down the path, that can show you the process. That internal work is crucial. Sponsorship. You need people that have been there before you to show you the way. We don't come in with all the answers. I came in with a lot of questions. I thought I had answers until I saw successful people in recovery and realized they were doing a lot of things that I was not doing and I didn't know how to do, and I wanted them to teach me. We practice recovery in all our affairs. It's not just for an hour a day I'm going to put on my face and I'm going to be all this spiritual guru, spiritual gangster for 1 hour, and then go home and cuss out people in traffic along the way, and then go to the grocery store and cuss out the lady ahead of me because she has 15 items in the 10 or less aisle, and, be spiritually fit in all of our affairs. Very important. Emotional sobriety. Once you get some time, and some of you may be there, where the drink or drug is behind you. It's not something that you obsess over every day. The obsession's gone. The craving's lifted. We've been granted a daily reprieve. But now we got to deal with some of the emotional stuff. We actually have to live as a human instead of a robot. We have to live instead of exist. And that comes with dealing with emotions. And sometimes we don't know how to handle it, and we want them to go away, and we don't like negative emotions. The good thing is they're finite. They do cycle. I mean, it's okay. It's part of the humanity. I wouldn't know what serenity was if I didn't experience chaos in my life. So I get to enjoy serenity today because I've had chaos. We are blessed that we went through some of the things we did because we can be grateful for where we're at today. My brother, who was a normie, he's weird. He went to high school. He got married. He bought a house, went to college, has 2 kids, 2 cars in the garage, has 2 cats. He's like this normal guy. And he doesn't get to see life like I do. I'm not saying he has a bad life, but I see some things I know he doesn't see, and I'm grateful for that. Service work. I know that in my recovery, if I want to get out of my head and get away from the committee that just keeps going on that hamster wheel, I need to jump into helping somebody else. Every time that I get involved in helping another house or helping individuals in houses or going through the steps with a sponsee, whatever it is, helping other people, my problems melt away during that time. I don't once think about my problems. I have to right now consciously say to myself, during this presentation, I am serving you all, sharing my experience, strength, and hope. I didn't once until right now think about my student loan debt and the payment that I have to make next week for that. But I'm of service. I don't think about that. I get to be of service to you all. And then attraction versus promotion. What example are you setting in the house? Because you have the new people looking up to you, whether you want to be on a pedestal or not. People that come in after you are going to be watching you and looking up to you. Walking the talk. Not just talking the talk. We're good at that. We survived active addiction. We know how to hustle. We know how to survive out there in the streets. When we get into recovery, we don't just talk the talk, we walk the talk. So you have to do that for recovery. So this core principle of recovery, if everybody in your house was working on this, man, you would have a strong house, wouldn't you? But not everybody in your house is doing this. That's one of the key things, is you have to set the example. The next one is responsibility. So when you come into Oxford House, it's more than just staying sober and paying your EES. There's some things we have to do. How many of you enjoy the freedom of Oxford House, the autonomy under your roof? That freedom has a price, and the price is responsibility. As an individual, you have to do some things. So you have to pay your ES on time. There's no money tree in the backyard. You can't just continue to get loans from chapter month after month. Everybody has to come in and pay their ES. You have to keep the house clean. We have to respect the property. There's a lease. There's future use. People that came in before you, hopefully they took enough care of it that you have a nice house. If it's not, then let's talk to the landlord about doing some upgrades and putting some work into it and doing some painting. How many of you are in a house that's been around for a lot of years and you got the white door and you got the grime around the door handle because it's been opened 10,000 times over the last decade? You know, a magic eraser does wonders. The people come in and they're too scared to make any major changes to the structure of the house because they're coming in, they're just trying to navigate and fit in. Get together and talk about those things. Don't just keep walking by the shrubs that are now taller than the window. Like, let's trim them. Let's go buy some trimmers and let's trim them. Those are the things. Keeping the house clean, respecting the property. Officer duties. You're going to get elected to an officer position at some point. You can't avoid it. And how many of you are worried about money? Did the hot check thing, the signatures of family members, have maybe some fear around money or dealing with checkbooks? You need to learn how to be a treasurer in your house while you have the protection and support of people around you. Don't let them say, I don't want to mess with the treasure stuff. Do it now. Why wait till you get out and you're on your own? Learn how to do that stuff. Learn how to balance a checkbook and do an audit while you're in an Oxford House. You have a responsibility to respect your housemates. You're not going to get along with them. You're going to have personality conflicts. And there's an opportunity for growth there. It's no fun in the middle of it, but there's an opportunity for growth there. And you can test how spiritually fit you are by when you get that housemates that knows how to push your buttons. And we've all had to live with that one, right? It's like, God dang, man. It's like, I can't stand this person. You have to have respect for them. You don't have to like them. We're not saying you got to sing Kumbaya together every morning, but you do. You have to have some general respect for your housemates. I would venture to say, and I don't want to defend anybody's behavior issues that they have in houses, but a lot of times people are doing the best they can that day with what they got, and that's just where they're at. Speak up. If you see something that turns your stomach a little bit, say something. Don't sweep it under the rug and just assume it's going to take care of itself. Like that one person that continues to come in after work and go straight to the bedroom, or you see him with the girlfriend or boyfriend instead of going to the meetings, and it's like you've seen it a million times. I know that story. I know what happens when somebody comes in and 90 days in, all of a sudden they're in this long-term relationship. Oh my gosh. You just got higher powered is what happened there. Accountability. So not only do you have individual responsibilities As a group, you are expected to hold each other accountable. In AA and NA, it is said often, you are not there to take other people's inventory. You take your own inventory. Guess what? Oxford House is not AA. You will have your inventory taken in Oxford House. Yeah. We will check you on your behaviors and your attitudes. We will let you know because we live together, and your behaviors and your attitudes have an impact on my quality of life, and we have to do it together. Address the conflict early. It's a snowball. It only gets bigger. I promise you, deal with it early at the first signs of it. It's going to be a bigger problem if you don't. Don't let the fear of confrontation prevent you from saying what needs to be said. If 2 or more of you have a gut feeling that something's wrong, financially, recovery, behavior, talk about it. Know the manual. You can't hold each other accountable just based on personalities. You have to go off the principles of what Oxford House was founded on. That principles over personalities that we talk about over and over again, it's easy to give it lip service. It's very difficult to enact. So use the manual as a guide and a tool. A lot of times you're looking for an answer that's right there in front of you if you know where the manual is. I always joke about houses. It's like if you don't have a house safe or you lost the key for it, just hide the money orders in the house manual. You know, nobody's going to find them there. I'm trying to be real, right? I've gone into some houses. I've had to literally blow dust off of the manual. It's been sitting on the shelf for so long. I mean, open the manual, people. When you're reading that tradition in the house meeting, read the whole page from the physical manual, not just the title of the tradition, okay? Manipulation. Okay, now, when holding others accountable, sometimes we like to manipulate. Not us. We're all guilty of it at all stages of recovery. But as a group, we should be able to recognize when that's happening and say something. Principles for personalities we talked about. Okay, if you can hold others accountable, you got to accept when it's coming at you. Don't get all bent out of shape because you're the seasoned member and the new guy wants to call you out because you left your shoes out in the living room overnight and that happens to be a finable offense. Don't be that guy or that girl that becomes the fine Nazi and starts tracking them down, waiting for them to drop something. Oh, you fined me, you put my name on the board, I'm watching you now. You better not set that purse down for more than 10 minutes. I got the stopwatch going. How many have fine Nazis in your house? There's always something written on the board. It's like, man, what are we doing here? And then I've seen houses go back and forth. Somebody has to put a comment, and then somebody has a response. And now it's the group chat. Everybody wants to chime in on a group chat. I mean, it's like, yeah, we'll get into the communication principle, but that's ridiculous. A tough love. Here's the reality. I care about all of you enough that if I see something that I think is going to be detrimental to your well-being and recovery, I'm going to say something, even if you don't want to hear it at the time. And I expect the same from you all. And we have to have a level of trust and relationship that we're comfortable enough doing that, no matter how new or how experienced we are in Oxford House. That's how seasoned members get turned into senior members, because they stray from their recovery, they get away from it, they get off the path a little bit, and the new people are too scared to bring them back in. And so nobody says anything. And I think that's a disservice to the people that have been in Oxford House long enough. The new people should be taught from day one, hey, call me out when you see it. Open communication. It should be open. It should be honest, uninterrupted. Don't interrupt each other. Even if you disagree with what they're saying, they have a right to say it. They have a right to their opinion. They have a right to their feelings. Okay, I see this all the time in houses. We don't agree with where somebody's coming from. We think they're wrong. It's not that they're wrong. It's just that we disagree with them. It's not about right or wrong. It's about differences of opinion, and that's where communication can hash it out. Sometimes you don't come to a solution. It's okay to disagree, but everybody needs to be able to speak their piece. Everybody should have an opportunity, not 20 minutes, but a couple of minutes to share where they're at on the subject, whatever the subject is. And if you're talking about other people's behaviors or contracts and stuff, it becomes personal. don't take it so personal. I mean, we're just trying to help you. They're tools for growth. Let me say this very slowly and clearly. Your guidelines in your house are not weapons for punishment. They're tools for growth, and they should be used accordingly. If you have people in your house that are using them as weapons and throwing them around to manipulate people into doing their will, why would you want to live in Oxford House? That's not the environment I want to live in. I've been in some of those stage 1 houses where I talked to the new person. They're like, I asked for extra shifts so I don't have to come home at night. Because it's so uncomfortable. There's so much tension in the house. I feel like I'm walking on eggshells. And you know what I do? I try to empower the house to communicate. Oftentimes, if you just bring it to the attention of the house, you can come to a solution. And sometimes what it really requires, and this is the tough one, somebody has to leave because they're unwilling to fall in line with what we're trying to do. They're still sober or abstinent, but they're not willing to do what needs to be done to live in that type of environment, and you have to ask them to leave. And the minute that happens, there's this sigh of relief. Have you ever felt it? Yes. That one person is gone, you're like, oh, man, that wasn't quite as hard as I thought it was. Because you definitely don't want it to escalate to where you have good people moving out because they're too scared to confront the one person that's ramrodding everybody. And it's like telling people what to do and ordering people around. And if you vote against me at the house meeting, there will be some passive aggressive consequences on the back end. Like you're going to feel it. It's going to sting. So don't ever cross me at the house meeting. So there's a time and a place to communicate. It's not on the front porch 10 minutes before the meeting with the 2 seasoned members. Respect the new people enough to discuss all things in front of all members. And please, the dry erase board and the messenger on Facebook and the group chat, face-to-face is so important. It's hard to see where people's tone is at, where their intentions are at. It's hard to have a proper response. You're getting one response at a time. It's very sporadic and very fractured. If you get everybody together, there's emotion in it, and we project and we'll put judgment on people's texts when their intentions were completely different, and we get sideways about that. So there are things that you can text, that are group chat worthy, like, hey, we got this interview set up for 6 p.m. or whatever. But if you're discussing house business and trying to take votes and stuff, schedule a time face-to-face. Don't do it over technology. It's a trap. It seems like it's a lot easier. It's not. It's a trap. Case building. Oh, my gosh. Character assassination. Oh, no. Gossip. That never happens in Oxford House. I don't know whether we're a high school or a junior high. It really depends. Junior high, how many sometimes the gossip is thick like a junior high, like middle school or junior high. It's like if this one house, right, something happens at this one house, and it's usually involved because guy A is dating girl B in one of the Oxford houses, and the drama between the two houses causes tension, and then they break up, and then they start dating somebody else in Oxford House. It's like, it's a very big world out there. Like, why do we have to keep dating within? It's like, we're going to have to start opening extra houses just with a daycare built on the side if this keeps up at this pace. So, I mean, there's a statement that's true. It's like, give yourself time to know who you are, going through the 12 steps, working a solid program of recovery. Get that time under you so you know who you are. I promise you, who you're attracted to at day 30 is a different type of person altogether of who you're attracted to at month 18. Different person altogether. And just the gossip. We like to hear about all the crap that's going on at the other houses, how bad their house is. Everybody likes to talk about that. Let's also talk about some of the good stuff that's going on. All right, last principle, unity and fun. Family dinner. Now, I'm not saying spend $150 every week out of the house account to have a family dinner, but get together, break bread. There's something special that happens. I mean, it goes back to biblical times about the power of breaking bread and coming together as a family and having a meal. There's a connection that happens there that's very special. Take time to do that. Do the how goes it. Where you at? How goes it? Where you at? Have the check-ins. At the end of the meeting, have everybody just a couple of minutes explain how their week went. Here's something that happened to me. I was living in Oxford House. I was pretty early on. One of my roommates came home. I was sitting at the computer by the front door, like, hey, how's it going? He's like, man, whatever. And he just kept going. Like, pretty much blew me off and ignored me. I immediately took it personal. What the hell did I do to him? Like, I don't deserve to be talked to that way. Like, how dare he? So I went to my other roommates. Did you see what just happened? Like, case building, getting them on my side. Like, he just disrupted my day. Is that disruptive behavior? Like, we need to talk about this at the house meeting. We'll throw disruptive behavior on all sorts of stuff. Yeah. Start a group chat. Isolation. He went straight to his bedroom after he just blew me off. We're going to have to talk about his isolation. But you know what? And my feelings were hurt, but at the house meeting, I found out that he had just got laid off from his job. And he didn't even recognize I was in the room. His head was not even present. He had no idea that he blew me off or that he hurt my feelings. And because I didn't go and talk to him or ask maybe how he's doing, instead of so worried about what was going on in my head, and I talked to everybody else about him instead of talking to him. You know what gossip needs to survive? Ears to listen. So if you are listening to the gossip, you are participating in it. Doesn't matter if you share it or not. If you're listening to it, you're participating. You're keeping it alive. It's like, I'm on to bigger and better things. I don't need to know what they're doing down the road unless it's an opportunity for me to serve. Celebrating birthdays. The new people come in. It's important that if you're not working or you're available, let's go celebrate that 30, 60, 90 day. Those are huge, huge. Now, some of you may have a year or 2 or 3. And for me, like, I'm at 13 and they're important. Birthdays are important for me, but they're not as significant as they was that first year in recovery, getting those month coins. And it means so much to have the support of your housemates there. It means so much. House outings, depending on how much is in your pocket or the house's account, go and do stuff that's fun together. Get out of the house and do stuff. Enjoy the common areas. Just because you have a cable box in your room doesn't mean everybody needs to watch their own shows. Just enjoy the common areas together. There's a lot that can be done other than a weekly house meeting in the living room. Host chapter events. When it's warm, get out the barbecue. You got a nice porch. Some of these houses have pools. It's, you got a park that's nearby. Just do some chapter events. Get other houses to see how great your house is. Food. Provide food, they will come. I mean, that's just how it works. We love to eat. We love to eat. I know most of y'all would not be up at 6:30 in the morning, except that's when breakfast started. Think outside the box. Come up with some ideas. Throw it around in your housing services meeting. How can we create more unity and fun? What's the number one complaint about Oxford House? Apathy. Nobody wants to step up. Nobody wants to get involved. Start something. It can be tiny, just 3 or 4 people. Just keep it going. Stay persistent. Just keep it going. People are going to see, and they're going to be attracted to that, and it's going to gain traction over time. Just keep doing it. Keep planning the unity events. So, in order to go from stage 1 to 2 to 3 to 4, you start to master these 5 core principles. Now, I'm not saying that you're going to have all 5 mastered at all times. You're going to waver a little bit from time to time based on the membership and the experience in the houses. But if you focus on those 5 core principles and do an honest 4th step, an inventory of your house as a whole, how many of you have done a 4th step for your house? Taking an inventory, what's good, what's bad, how can we improve? Use these guiding principles, these core principles to do a 4th step of your house and say, okay, Where are the gaps at? What are we doing that we can improve on that maybe we have blind spots that we didn't even see, and it opened up your eyes to say, okay, I recognize. How many of you see something that you recognize right now in your house you could go and improve? One of the core principles. So in summary, before we take some questions, what time does this session end? 11. All right, good. We got 20 minutes. We're doing good. 4 house stages. Number 1, survival. Number 2, stable. Number 3, successful. And number 4, significant. And you can use these classifications not as judgments for houses, but as just a truth, a reality to say as a chapter, we need to help this house. What stage are they at? Well, they're at stage 2. So you kind of get an idea in your head. It's like, all right, they're struggling a little bit, but it's not like code red, like we need to really send a bunch of people and get some core members over there. And oh my God, it's an emergency. Let's go over there this week. You can figure out where you're at. How many houses in your chapter? Where are they at? Where are the other houses in your chapter? What stages? Most of them should be stage 2 and 3. 90% of your houses are probably stage 2 or 3. You might have 1 or 2 that are stage 1 you're working with, and you probably have 1 or 2 that are stage 4 that just are rocking it. But most of them are hovering around stage 2 or 3. What we want, our goal, is to get all the houses to at least stage 3. At least stage 3 with the few stage 4s that you can rely on when you start to open new houses. So to do that, you focus on 5 core principles: recovery, responsibility, accountability, communication, and fun. So with that, we'll open the floor. We have a microphone in the middle of the aisle. If somebody has a comment or a question regarding the 4 stages or 5 core principles, Jason and I will be glad to answer those for you. And everybody, let's have a little bit of respect. If you are going to go ahead and leave a little bit early, let's just try to keep the noise level down out of respect to who's asking the questions. And for those of you that are leaving early, I want to thank you all for coming into this breakout, supporting Jason and I as we share our experience, strength, and hope. All right, tell us your name and where you're from and what you got to say.
My name's Aaron. I'm from Bremerton, Washington. I just recently moved into I just recently switched house into a different house. It's kind of, yeah, and they're good financially, but the house is a little toxic. A lot of the newcomers that come in, what I've noticed is a lot of the newcomers that come in usually tend to relapse rather quickly, and trying to figure out better ways to prevent that, which I've already learned a couple things, and just some of the people just aren't into participating or, showing up to house meeting, putting their jobs first before anything. Is there any other pointers you might have?
Pointers for helping prevent newcomers from relapsing?
I guess it's a pretty silly question, I guess. But
no, I mean, it's not a silly question.
Like celebrating birthdays, that's a big thing. That's really cool.
I think we, as people in the community, we get newcomers that come in. They're strong outside meetings, and there are meetings that people are going and they're getting papers signed. Like, there's not a whole lot of recovery being shared. Let's try to direct them and get them involved in the stronger community meetings, maybe help guide them to getting a strong sponsor that is going to work with them closely. We want to get them plugged into the network as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
And sometimes we can help navigate that path quickly.
Indeed. Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Jamie, and I'm from San Antonio, Texas.
Hey, Jamie.
Okay, so hi. I just moved into a house as a core member, and I'm trying to figure out how to balance, because everybody's brand new in the house pretty much, and it's finally where it's not flipping every, just people coming and leaving and coming and leaving. But how to balance being accountable and showing love and tolerance, but also staying firm on what the guidelines are and what I am replicating to what I know from Green Meadow, bringing it to my house now without looking like I am being a boss, because I'm not trying to portray that, but I am writing stuff on the board all the time, and I am, trying to but I'm replicating, but also trying to balance that without looking like like I'm being the boss, because they don't know nothing, no motions, no nothing, and I'm trying to say like read the manual, learn the rules, but I don't know how to balance that.
So you can also take some extra time in your house meetings to go through some of those things, to read pages of the manual.
Okay.
Not just read your traditions, but also in some houses that I teach them to read also the tradition of the week, but also a rule of the week or guideline of the week. You know, go through those, spend some extra time just reading the manual together and talking about some of the things that are, you know, may not be done up to par in regards to the guidelines. So just showing that love and concern during the house meeting, not just necessarily writing on the board and saying, hey, this is what we did or didn't do, but just, you know, going a step further and explaining that these guidelines are set up over 43 years of time-tested, evidence-based of what works best for a house that's newly starting.
Thank you
Make
so
sense?
much.
You're welcome.
I'd also dovetail on that to say, sometimes when you're the only one with the experience, they sometimes just think you're being bossy when you're just trying to teach. Maybe bringing in somebody from HSE from another house to kind of support you and saying, yeah, what she's saying is right. She's not trying to tell you what to do. You have more than one voice that's helping to teach.
My name's Dylan. I'm from Great Bend, Kansas. I have a question about meetings. Like, I'm not saying it's happening in our house, but I've seen it before. Hey, what? I'm just saying. Like, I'm being honest. Say we're supposed to make 3 meetings, and some people go to church or they have treatment, and some people don't even make it to NA. Like, would that be a problem? Because I know NA is a huge part in my recovery, but then again, it might not be a huge part in someone else's recovery. So is that something that we should fix? Should we start like trying to get them to like trying to push them
here's
towards
the reality,
going to it?
and some of you aren't going to like what I'm going to say. It's up to your house, however many meetings you want to vote in. Now, if your house doesn't have a probably pretty strict guideline on what they want the meetings to be, and in really encouraging and promoting 12-step recovery or one of the other pathways of recovery, you know, I'm a proponent of refuge recovery, and it's a little different than the 12-step recovery. But I think it's important that we get outside of ourselves, outside of the house, and go to and participate in some type of activity and program that shows our growth in recovery, and the behaviors will denote whether whatever they're saying they're doing, whether it be church or counseling or refuge recovery or smart recovery or 12-step recovery, their behaviors will dictate whether they are participating and growing in that. And that's what the house should focus on, not a number. I can go and get sheets signed all day long telling you I've been to X number of meetings a week, but if I'm still being a jerk in the house, it's one thing. OHI and chapters can't tell you how many houses or meetings you have to go to a week. You as a house have to make that decision yourselves and decide whether you want to count church, whether you want to count. I've seen houses that have a lot of people coming directly from prison, and they go to church and they grow. Yeah. And they show growth by going to their church and their men's meeting and their empowerment meetings. Their house is fine with it. There's nothing wrong with that. So don't think that there's a policy that says it's this narrow pathway and this only. That's the beauty of autonomy in the houses.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, I'm Morgan. I'm from Wichita, Kansas.
Hey, Morgan.
So I had a question about people coming in and out after they do relapse. A lot of people, I feel as if it's personality over principles. When they go out and relapse, some of them aren't required to go to detox, and they allow this member to come back into the house or immediately to couch, you know what I mean? I don't know. I don't know what to think about it, really, because in my opinion, they should be going to detox first, you know? In some cases, these people are repeat, I don't want to say offenders, but at the same time, they kind of are, you know? They're using our house, and their actions are still not changing. So I was wondering what you thought of that.
So in the manual, it talks about establishing a solid return to sobriety. whatever that particular house feels is a solid return to sobriety for that individual to reapply to a house. I think it's really important to learn, to remember that, unfortunately, some people have to go through the revolving door several times in relapse. Relapse doesn't have to be the answer, but in the end, and I hate this term so much, but when they do get it, they're going to experience and remember those times as a part of their story and learning blocks, right? And it's also learning blocks for the house. It's teaching that house a lesson as well. But the solid return to sobriety really needs to be talked about within your house, and it's also in the manuals. Jackson, do you want to say something more about that?
So if somebody relapses and they get right back in, whether even in like couching, that's a manipulation of the process. We're not doing them any disservice. We may even be putting a nail in their coffin by doing that.
Okay.
We're allowing them to not experience the natural consequences of their actions. Because everybody that interviews understands that this is a zero tolerance environment. They need to leave. Here's what we need to teach people when it comes to relapse. And this is key. Comes down to perception. Remember when I held up the dollar? We need to change our perception on how we look at relapse. It's not that we stop helping people. We just have to do it from a different address. Okay? We help them get into wherever supports they need, whether it be treatment or detox, or if they're not there, somewhere else. They have to find somewhere else to go. We still want to help them. Let's come to a meeting. I'll come pick you up, or let's go have coffee. Like, let's not lose track or touch if you're wanting to get right back into recovery, but we're not going to couch you, and you can't stay here. We'll help you just from a different address. And we need to be communicating that. Continue to help, just not in Oxford House right now. Let's wait a couple of weeks, maybe 3 weeks, maybe like the manual says, 30 days.
Right.
And let's do an interview at that time.
Alrighty. Thank you very much.
Suggested a different house, but that's up to the house.
All right, my name is Justin Jenkins, and I am Greenbrier, Virginia, Chesapeake, Virginia. All right, I've got 3 or 4 questions. I'm just going to give you the questions because I am a person that forgets. One, it's the full autonomy. Of course, when we have a revolving loan, we're not fully autonomous. So, of course, the rules that are set with the house are pretty much God. 2, there's a... basically the question is I know that there are certain rules that are set in stone, but I know that there are some rules that are not clearly established, and we have to pretty much how could I put it? We have to discern what rules are what. 2, it's like recently we had to expel somebody over the fact that they were smoking in their room and it was breaking the lease. However, they wanted to keep them in the house, even though it was breaking the lease and we could have possibly lost our house. How would we go about dealing with principles before personality? Because most of the people at the house during this meeting was like, "Oh, I go with my heart. I go with my my instinct." How would we combat that concept of principles before personality? And contract. Okay. 3, I forgot the third one, but those are the 2 main things that I want to address or ask.
The first one, different areas handle that different way. With it, my personal opinion is, from my experience with Oxford houses have, as long as they're paying their bills on time, there's no issue with anybody coming to override or put any special rules or guidelines or stipulations in their house. Even if you're under a chapter loan, if you're paying them on time, you are considered autonomous in your financial standings with the charter. Yeah, all bills with the charter of your house. So that includes your dues, your loans, your utilities, the landlord, like everything that you're supposed to do to operate is being paid in full and on time. There really shouldn't be anybody that's coming in and telling you what you can or can't do. Now, there are houses that get in trouble and they need a loan from the chapter, and the chapter can come in on the front end and set a foundation to say, you're going to require to get this loan, we're going to require this promissory note that the chapter's going to work with you. But the goal is always to get the houses to make their own decisions the right way and not have our thumb on them. But we want you to take your autonomy and run with it as quickly as possible so that we can go on to do other things. As a chapter officer, even as an outreach, the last thing I want to do is sit in a house meeting week after week after week. It's the last thing I want to do. I want you to handle your own business so I can handle my own business and we get together and have fun. Right? That's not the goal. That shouldn't be the goal. So I think you need to talk to your area as a whole, because cultures change from area to area, on what the best way is to protect the autonomy of the individual houses. The other thing that you mentioned about principles over personalities, I mean, if you can solve that one, we'll let you come and run the entire convention. Like, it's like, there's really no one answer, because it's always
Right.
circumstantial. There's always issues that come up with people and personalities.
Yeah, and I mean, the smoking in the room, that's just real clear cut.
I mean, yeah, you got
Like, if your landlord says no smoking in the house, it's really even out of our hands.
Right.
So that's just clear cut.
All right.
Did I answer all your questions?
Yes, you did.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Haley, and I'm from Wichita Falls, Texas.
Hi, Haley.
My question relates to a contract that we put in place. We had a girl that would, her mother's paying her rent, and she stays in her room on her phone all the time. So we put a contract in place that she had to do at least 10 hours of community service a week or work 20 hours a week. And she's not fulfilling that contract. Short of kicking her out, what do we do?
My philosophy is, in Oxford House, not only are houses self-supporting, but individuals should be self-supporting. So if she has the ability and the means for gainful employment, then she needs to not rely on family members or outside support systems. And we need to be encouraging her to be self-supporting, because, again, we're not doing anybody any favors by allowing them to continue to be dependent upon parents or family members. So putting them on a contract to do something for themselves is very, very good. But anytime you put anybody on a contract, you need to write in the minutes, what are the consequences for violating the contract?
Okay.
Most of the time, it's going to be expulsion. If it's gotten to that point, here's a good rule of thumb that I learned from one of my coworkers in Oklahoma. Whenever there's issues in the house, whether it's recovery, behavior, money, you want to do warning, contract, eviction, right? We have some hard lines with the relapse and violence and breaking the law. Like, there's some hard lines there where you go, you got to go. But most of the time, it's behavioral or financial stuff that we can work with them. So you talk about it in the house meeting, give them an opportunity to correct it, make them aware of it, give them some experience on how to correct it. If it doesn't work, then we got to put some on paper in the minutes. We're going to put you on contract. This is what you got to change, how you change it, and how long you have to change it. And if you don't, here's what happens. So if it doesn't work, you have it in the minutes. And I make a motion they violated their contract.
Okay.
That's
Thank
easy
you.
to do. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Chelsea. I'm from San Antonio, Texas. How would I go, or even as just, how would I go about addressing or constructively approaching a member or members in the house that have been there for a long period of time that aren't either replicating or being helpful to the newcomer, and maybe have just stayed so long that it's just like, you know what I mean? Like, how would you constructively, and like no debating, no arguing, like, you know what I mean? Like, it's kind of a touchy subject because they've been there so long that they probably, you know.
I would bring up trying to invite members from other newer houses over and share with them, or go invite the house members that you're in currently to go to the new members' houses. Try to get them involved. Other than that, I mean, chapter, housing services, talk about it and see if there's, people that can get them involved. But just trying to get them involved, get them back in the middle of the boat.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
The good thing about senior members in Oxford House is they're always in the minority. We just have to empower the majority to get the senior members to either step up and get involved or move along and give up your bed for somebody who needs it.
Hey, I'm Melissa. I'm a new outreach in Florida. And I just wanted to say how great this was. This is the best session so far. And I wish all the residents could be in this session, like, for real.
Give me some.
Because this is, yeah. No, it was. It was the best so far. And I just wanted to say, you talked a lot about seasoned and senior, and it's tricky. It's tricky when you start opening houses in a brand new area like I am. I'm down in Cape Coral, Southwest Florida. I don't have nobody, so everybody's very far, for me to even. So I'm doing it all alone, trying to, and I'm not always the friendliest person. That's my weak point, is working on how to build people up. That's my weak spot. But I bought some members here. I bought 2 residents here, and I'm hoping that this is gonna. This is going to get them more involved and give them what they need. That I'm not the best at giving them. But I also wanted to say for seasoned members, because you did talk about that a lot, it's important try not to get too complacent. Consider moving to new houses in Florida and becoming a seasoned and being a core member. And maybe
There you go.
there could be some EES incentives involved.
Everybody has gifts to give, and find out what your gifts are and give them.
Florida is beautiful and sunny, so
do-
if you're a core member, you have a lot.
Out of respect for the other panels that are later, we do have to close this one out. Jason and I, we're going to be available. We're going to be running around, so if you have questions, come find us. We're at the 11 o'clock hour. Thank you all.